Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Uniden R3 and specifically going over all the different buttons, the different features of the detector, and then we're also going to go into the menu and take the time to explain all the different menu options and settings available so that you can learn how to set it up and program it depending on what you need. Now, for those of you guys who are running the Uniden R1, that's a little bit different, so I'm going to do a separate video just for the R1. The link for that's down in the video description. Now, for those of you guys, if you'd prefer, instead of watching a video, maybe you just kind of want to read over everything, I've got an article on my website that I'm going to link you to also in the video description where I take the time to explain all the different buttons and the menu options if you'd prefer to read instead. Now, at the bottom of that article, I'm also going to give you guys kind of a general list of recommended settings if you just want to quickly program your detector, and those settings are going to be good for all over the country. And then I've got a couple notes depending on where you drive, things may change. I'm also going to share with you guys my own settings that I run on my own personal detectors day to day here where I live. And then finally, the firmware that I'm going to be running here for this video, it's version 1.30. Uniden likes to improve things over time to add new features and to change things, so depending on when you're watching this video, it may be a little bit different if it's got some things that aren't available in this firmware. And so the article on my website will always have the most up-to-date information. It's really easy to just quickly edit an article as opposed to completely reshoot a video from scratch, right? So if you see anything that's a little bit different because there's been a new firmware update released, take a look at the article on my website, again, linked in the video description. And with that said, let's go ahead and pop the detector on the windshield and start running through all the different buttons, settings, and menu options so that you can learn how to use the detector for yourself. All right, so starting off with the buttons on top of the R3, we've got the power button to turn the guy on and off. We have the menu button, which will actually take us into the menu itself. Volume up and down, of course, will adjust our audio volume, and they'll also let us go through the menu itself. We can go forwards through volume up, and if we go too far, we can also go backwards through the menu with the volume down button. When we see an item that we want to go into, we can just press the menu button and it'll select that option. Now, as far as the buttons here on the front of the detector, we've got a couple different ones. We'll start with the mute one. Obviously that one's pretty self-explanatory. When you get an alert like this, you can just press the mute button and that'll go ahead and mute the alert for you. Now this button also does a couple of other things. You can see it says dim right here on the side. This can also be used to dim our display. So right now it's set up to the brightest option, which is nice for daytime. If we press and hold it like this, you can see it says dim. We can go dimmer. We also have an option for dark and for off. Now the dark option is pretty cool. What this is going to do is it's going to keep our display basically turned off until we get an alert. Now a cool thing is you can see in the bottom left hand corner there's a little blinking dot. It might be a little bit hard to see since it's daytime. That's just there to let us know that the detector is working, which is really nice since you might not always be able to tell since the screen is off, right? Now when you get an alert, you'll see it'll pop up on screen like this. I'll just go ahead and mute it real quick. So that way when there's an alert present, it gets your attention really nicely visually, which I actually quite like. But then when there's nothing going on, it turns off. So it does a really good job of grabbing your attention. However, it is kind of dim. We'll trigger it again. You can see actually it's not the full bright option, and you don't have any control over how bright it is when it's in dark mode. It's always going to be in the dimmest option. So this is really best for nighttime usage, not so much during the day. And then we also have the off option, which just keeps the display off no matter what. We are still going to hear everything, but the display is off whether we get an alert or not. Now, this mute button also does two other things for us when we are getting an alert. When we get a K-band alert, if we want to lock out the signal because it's a false alert, just double press the button and it'll go ahead and learn and remember that particular signal so that next time you drive by, it's going to automatically mute it for you. Very helpful feature to use for speed signs or for drugstores with automatic door openers. Now, when you come across a red light camera, if you want to delete that particular red light camera alert, same thing, just double press the mute button and then it'll go ahead and delete that particular red light camera out of the database. That way you don't get alerted to it next time you drive by. Now the mark button on the right hand side, this one will allow you to manually mark a particular location. You can see it says user mark log and notify us every time we come by here again, so that if this particular location is maybe commonly used as a speed trap or something, you can have the detector remind you every time you come back up here. Now the menu button on top is going to take us into the menu, of course, but it also has another feature where if we long press it, you can see we can switch modes. We can go into city mode, we can do advanced, or we can do highway. And whichever one that you select will actually show up here on screen. You can see right here it says advanced on the right hand side. There's a number of different ways to actually display information on screen, but that's a cool shortcut for actually changing sensitivity modes. It's just a long press of the menu button like this. Now if you want to go into the menu itself, it's just a quick press and that's going to drop us into the menu. Now the first option is like what we saw before. We can go in and switch different modes, right? So it's the first option in the menu, or you can just long press the menu button and that's kind of the shortcut to get into it. Now highway mode is going to be full sensitivity on all bands, so maximum performance. City mode is going to be full sensitivity on Ka band, but reduced sensitivity on K band and X band. And then finally, advanced mode gives us complete control over all 3 different radar bands, including X, K, and Ka. And when we're in advanced mode, these 3 options open up. So let's say maybe you're getting too much performance and range on K band, and you want to dial back the sensitivity. You can go ahead and do that here, anywhere from 100% down to 30% sensitivity in 10% increments, and you have control over all 3 bands. A quick note, if we go back to city mode, this is kind of the equivalent of X-band and K-band being set to 10% sensitivity. So you actually can reduce the sensitivity even more so by going into city than what you can do with advanced. So just kind of a little fun fact. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. GPS. So if you want to turn all the GPS stuff on and off, you have the option. If you want to get alerted to things like speed cameras or red light cameras, you have the ability to turn those on and off specifically. Red light camera quiet ride is a helpful feature where if you're driving on the highway and you don't want to get alerted to red light cameras nearby, you can just set a threshold. So maybe if you're driving over 65 miles per hour, for example, you know you're not on city streets, you're definitely on the highway, it can mute all of the different red light camera alerts for you. So you can turn it off if you like as well. This applies to all red light camera alerts as opposed to individually deleting one particular red light camera alert when you come across it. So a little different feature, but also useful. Now voice on. You can turn it on and off when we go through the menu, and you'll hear the beeps like this, and it'll also announce K-band or Ka if you want that in addition to just the audio beeps themselves. Voice off. You can turn different bands on and off. So X-band, for example, you can turn detection on and off. It's not used pretty much across the whole country in this point, with the exception of Ohio and New Jersey, where it's still very actively used, and a couple other spots here and there around the country. But otherwise, for most people, you can run X-band turned off. K-band is in use almost everywhere across the country. Maybe California, for the most part, you could turn K-band off, but everywhere else, you'll definitely want to run with K-band on and rely on the other filters that we're going to be talking about. Ka-band is used almost everywhere in the country, so you'll definitely want to leave this guy on as well. Now, laser detection, on and off if you want to get notified when you get shot with laser. If you want to get notified of pop, whether it's K-band pop or Ka-band pop, the detector has the ability to alert you to either one. This applies to 67 millisecond K-band pop, but not to 16 millisecond pop. So if you have K-band pop in use in your area, which really isn't realistically in use anywhere, but if you want the option, you can do this. Most people actually recommend leaving it off to cut down on false alerts and get better performance and whatnot, so generally you can just leave this turned off. The K-band filter helps you filter out BSMs and whatnot, so definitely a good idea to have this feature turned on. It's a very effective filter, and so leave it turned on. The Ka filter will help you filter out false alerts on Ka bands, such as other maybe nearby radar detectors. I've found in my experience, and a lot of other people are reporting too, that you can leave it turned off and it doesn't actually false a lot. Plus, you get better performance with Ka filter off, so most people actually just leave the filter off and run it that way. But you can turn it on like this if you do start encountering some false alerts on Ka band. TSF is the traffic sensor filter. So if you're driving on the highway and you're constantly getting these repeated blasts of K-band, you can turn the traffic sensor filter on. They're basically traffic sensors on the side of the highway that measure the flow of traffic. It's different from the BSM, but if you encounter those, turn it on. Otherwise, turn it off and you will get better performance. You can always take a look at the RDFGS as well. That's a good resource. I'll link to it in the video description, and it'll let you know what, if you need traffic sensor filtering in your area or not. That's a pretty good resource. K-band narrow. Now you have two different ways of actually sweeping K-band. You can either sweep all of K-band with K-wide, or you can cut off kind of the top and bottom extremes and do a more narrow sweep of K-band. The idea is you can cut out some of the false alerts higher and lower, but the thing is, in the US, police can use anywhere here within K-band wide to actually run their radar guns and issue tickets. So K-band wide is best here for the US. K-band narrow, maybe for people abroad, or if you really want to cut down on some false alerts and K-band isn't used much in your area at all, you can focus in on the center. A quick note about K-band narrow. When it comes to Acuras and Hondas, for example, those tend to be right around 24.198 to 24.203 or so. K-band narrow, the cutoff is right at 24.200, so it will filter out some of them, but not all of them. So that's an example of maybe when you could use the filter to cut out some of the falses, but it's not going to work against all of them. Now Ka narrow, similar idea. Ka wide, you can have it sweep the entire range of Ka band, or you can have it focus into just the frequencies that police officers generally tend to use. Most people like this. Traditionally for detectors, this does give you better performance because you're scanning a much narrower range of frequencies, but on this detector, Uniden, their engineers are saying that there actually should be no performance difference between the two because it's always scanning Ka wide, and Ka narrow is just choosing which frequencies the detector alerts to, but it's always still scanning here. However, our testing is showing that for whatever reason, Ka narrow is getting better performance, and so a lot of people tend to prefer to run their detectors this way. Now, a quick note, for those of you guys who live in New York, you're probably going to want to run Ka wide because there are some stalker guns that are up in 34.8, 34.9-ish that Ka narrow will not alert to. So if you live in New York, you'll probably want to run Ka wide. Otherwise, for the most part, Ka narrow should be fine across the US. Ka priority is a new feature that we've got with 1.30. Very nice feature, as opposed to signal priority. Now, you basically got two different ways for the detector to prioritize when you've got multiple alerts. Ka priority is going to alert in the priority of the band. So laser has the top priority, then Ka, then K-band, then X-band, in that order. The detector also has the option to alert you to the strongest signal, generally what's closest to you and what's therefore typically going to be the strongest signal. Now, this is good if you want to be alerted to the strongest signal, but you could run into a situation where maybe there's a blind spot false or a speed sign right next to you that's really strong, and there's a weak Ka-band signal in the distance. The detector is going to prioritize that strong K-band signal over the weak Ka-band signal if you have it in signal priority. So, signal priority is designed to focus on the strongest signal, whereas Ka priority focuses on prioritizing the alerts by band. This is typically what I run, but you've got the choice of running it either way, whatever you prefer. All threat mode is also very handy for alerting to multiple signals. The idea is when you get an alert, it'll actually show up on screen and give you the frequency, the signal strength, etc. of your primary alert. But when you're getting some additional alerts, it'll replace what you have over here on the left side of the screen with information about those additional signals, up to 3 more, including the band and the signal strength, and you can see how many signals there are. It's only going to give you the frequency of the primary signal, but it's a very useful feature to get more information about all the different threats that are around you. Personally, I find this feature very helpful, and I love running it with it turned on, but if you only want to be alerted to the primary signal and have this guy always be your speedometer or altimeter or compass or whatever you have set here, you have the option of turning off the all threat display and only focusing on the primary signal. You can also choose what color display you like. So you can see I've got blue selected. We also have amber. We've got green, pink, gray, and red. So 6 different colors. You can choose whatever color you like best, or maybe what matches your vehicle's interior best. Personally, I like kind of going between red and blue, but totally up to you, just an aesthetic choice. We've also got a number of different ways of displaying information on screen when there's no signal present. We can either display the current time. You also have the option of having this kind of animated heartbeat type scanner on screen if you like. Maybe you don't want to display the time. Personally, I find that a little bit distracting and whatnot, but you totally have the option of running it however you like. And then the third option you have is displaying the mode that you're detecting in, basically your sensitivity mode. So you can see we've got highway mode right now. We can switch to city mode and it will display city on screen. If we switch it to advanced mode like this, it'll say advanced on screen. So if you don't want the clock and you don't want the scanning heartbeat scanner, you can just have it simply display the mode on screen like this. Now, speaking of what you can display on screen, you can have it display the speed on the left side of the screen. You can also have it display both the speed and the compass to get the direction of travel. You can get it to display your compass. You can get the voltage of your car, as well as an altimeter to let you know what elevation that you're currently at. Personally, I like speed. Sometimes I also like running the compass as well, but totally up to you to run what you like. Now you can have it run in miles per hour or in kilometers per hour. You can also have a number of different tones assigned for X, K, Ka, and laser. So let's run through them real quick just so that you can hear the different tones, but you can see we can assign them for any of the bands or for laser. And so totally up to you to choose, what tones you like for any of the bands there. We now have custom control. Now, auto mute is very nice. So after the detector's been alerting for 3 seconds, it's going to go ahead and mute the signal down to a reduced volume for you, which is very handy. You can have that feature turned off if you like, which is maybe nice so you can hear the ramp up continuously in the dash cam footage, but most people like it turned on. The idea is your detector is going to get your attention initially and then reduce the volume so it's not constantly screaming at you. You also have control over how far down it reduces the volume after it's alerting at full volume for 3 seconds. So you could, for example, maybe mute it altogether. You could have it maybe give you just a really low volume auto muted alert, or if that's too quiet and you still want to hear it, you could actually maybe turn up the auto mute volume a little bit more if you like. So you've got control over both the main primary volume as well as the auto muted volume after it drops it down after 3 seconds. You've also got control of the backlight. You can see right here we can turn it on and off. It's just these two buttons here on the front. It doesn't actually affect the buttons on top of the detector. It's just the two on the front. If you want these buttons, it makes it a little bit easier to find at night, but you can turn it off if you like for a little bit stealthier look. Quiet Ride is going to be our GPS-based low-speed muting. Very, very helpful to keep the detector quiet around town. You basically just select what low-speed muting threshold you want, and then when you're traveling below this speed, it's going to automatically mute your radar signals for you, like X-band and K-band and whatnot, just to make sure the detector stays nice and quiet for you. Or you can turn it off altogether and not do any low-speed muting. But personally, I find this super helpful when you're around town or in traffic or a red light or something. Really nice feature. If you want to get notified whenever you're traveling over a particular speed, this is totally separate from radar or laser detection. You can just set it right here. So let's say maybe 80 miles per hour you know is too fast. If you just want to get the detector notifying you if you're traveling over the speed, you can just set it right here. You can also set your time zone. So the time will be set by GPS, and then the time zone you select will be just selected right here, Pacific, Eastern, etc. Daylight savings time is also an option for when that changes. So if you set your time zone, but then you notice, oh, the clock is off by an hour, just flip the daylight savings time option, and it'll go ahead and fix the clock for you. Now, the battery warning is pretty nice as well. If your car battery starts to drop below, basically too low of a voltage, the detector can alert you. If you don't want that alert, you can just turn it off. The battery saver feature is a very helpful feature for those of you guys having your detector plugged into a power source that doesn't automatically turn off with your car. The idea is if you have your detector on right while your car is parked, it could be draining your car battery and then preventing your car from being able to start next time. So if you turn this feature on, the idea is when you've been parked and therefore stationary for 30 minutes, which you can tell with the GPS, it'll automatically shut off your detector for you after half an hour to basically save your car battery. So if you've got it plugged into a power source that's always turned on, it doesn't turn off with your car, go ahead and enable the battery saver feature. You also have a self-test option, which is basically does a quick self-test at the startup of the detector, gives you some beeps and whatnot. Personally, I prefer running this turned off for a faster and quieter boot up process. If you want to reset all of your factory default settings, you can do that right here. You also have the option to delete all of your GPS lockouts that you've created here with this button. And you can also delete all of the manually marked user locations that you've created with this button, like I did at the beginning of the video. Since I want to delete that one, I'll just go ahead and do that. Now, after this delete all user option to delete all those manually marked locations, we can also display the current firmware. You can see right now I'm running firmware version 1.30 and DSP version 1.95. This also tells me the red light camera database, currently April 5th, 2017 is the database that I'm currently using. And then finally, the last option, exit like this, and it just brings us back into the main whatever it's called display. Detector's up and running and ready to go. So anyways, there's a quick run through of the Uniden R3. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Again, visit my website for all this information, plus my general recommended settings, as well as the settings that I run myself day to day. Other than that, I hope this has been helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.